Hello again, and as they said on Monty Python, now for something completely different. I'm not actually fishing today, I'm at home today. I'm unable to get out at the moment. I'm grounded because the leg's playing me up again. So I thought I'd do a bivvy review for you. One of the most common questions I'm asked by people that I go out with is what bivvy do you use, or what bivvy should I buy? And when I explain to them I don't actually have one bivvy, I have three, they ask the question why. Well, it's mainly because I've never found one bivvy that suits all of my requirements. And my requirements being the venue that I'm going to fish and the duration of my stay at that particular venue. So I have three different bivvies that meet my requirements. Now, I'm not sponsored by any of these manufacturers before anybody writes in with that particular question. They just happen to be the ones that suit me. And what you want to bear in mind while I'm doing this review is not particularly the make, it's the style of bivvy that you want to actually be looking at, and you want to be asking yourself what style of bivvy suits my particular style of fishing. There are many other competitors' bivvies out on the market that are competitively priced to these particular makes, and you might find one of those suits you equally well. What I'm actually going to review is a comparison between the Tracker Tempest Brolly, the Fox Super Brolly 60 inch and the Tracker Armo 2-man. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start by weighing each of them and measuring each of them, because that's often a consideration, especially if you've only got a small car, or if you haven't got a car at all and you're one of these people that has to walk to their venue or borrow their gear to a venue. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set these up. I'll time lapse it because you don't want to be hanging around while I'm doing that, and then we'll come back to each one and see exactly what you get for your bucks, so to speak. Included in the Tempest Brolly system is the carry bag, the brolly itself, pegs and tensioning strap. So, with regards to the Tempest, that's basically what you get for your money. It comes in at about £190 at the time of me making this review. It is just the basic shelter with the tensioning strap. There is no ground sheet, although a ground sheet is available as an optional extra. You can also buy an overwrap for it as well, which has a complete front door. The ground sheet comes in at about between £30 and £40, and the overwrap comes in at about £100. There are other options for this shelter as well. There's an extension skin which will turn it into a 2-man bivvy. I think that comes in at about £160 at the time of me making this video, and there's an option for the extension ground sheet to go with it as well, and also they do what's called a skull cap, which will give this a bit of a peak. It fits onto this here and it will give it a little bit of a peak. So all in all, if you took into account the basic shelter, ground sheet and the overwrap to turn it into a full bivvy with a door, you're looking at just over £300, which is probably about the same price as the Fox Super Brolly. So if you compare them that way, price wise they're about the same. Obviously on the Tempest the material is an awful lot thinner. It has got rain guttering down it. I've used this extensively. I've not had any leakage problems or have got wet with it yet. My favourite thing to use this on is personally for the canal or very quick overnighters, because it's got such a rapid setup time. Even putting the ground sheet in there, which is only a couple of minutes extra, it fits in with all of the pegging points. The ground sheet is a full ground sheet, comes right out to these points here, and it stops anything from getting wet and muddy on the floor. As I said, I tend to use it for the canal because it doesn't take up a huge amount of room, and it's ever so quick to set up. And quite often when I'm doing overnighters on the canal or elsewhere, I won't actually put a bivvy up if I don't need to. As long as it's not going to rain, I don't bother. I just have the bed chair out in the open and sleep in the open, so I've got less to pack up in the morning. But the beauty of this is, because it is so rapid to set up, if a bit of rain, if you carry it with you and a bit of rain does come on by surprise, you can put this up in less than 2 minutes, drop it straight over your bed chair, and all your bed chair and all of your stuff's covered and you're totally waterproof. Height wise, I come in at about 5'10", so that gives you a pretty good estimate for your particular size. And you've got approximately 4 foot in height there. I've pegged this to its highest points, give or take a centimetre or two. So you've got just about 4 foot 1 there, height wise, getting in and out of the bivvy. I've pushed the bed chair as far back as I'd really want to without it touching the sides, because you don't want water ingress coming in through where the bed chair's touching the sides. I've got the bed chair body on, as you can see, and sitting back on that, my feet would be level with the entrance of the doorway, and it leaves me approximately between the bed chair and there, about 2 foot width there. I've got a little bit of about 8 inches at that end, and probably about the same the other end of the bed chair for storing stuff, and there is a gap also behind the bed chair that I can fit stuff into. Where I wouldn't be particularly happy with this is when I've got a situation where the wind is incoming and there is a forecast of rain, because it would quite easily drive inside here, and I don't think you're far enough back to keep you dry personally. It's alright if you're able to position your bivvy so that it's got its rear to the wind or side to the wind, but if you're in a situation where you've got to be facing into the wind and it's going to rain, there is a good chance you or your equipment will get wet. One other thing worth mentioning while we're on the subject is there is no rear ventilation on this bivvy at all, which might be a minor thing. Certainly in the winter it's not going to make much difference to you. I notice you tend to get an awful lot of condensation, as you do with most single skin bivvies. You do tend to get quite a bit of wet dripping into you. At least there is no central boss to bang your head on because it's on the outside, but the other advantages in other systems is where the central boss is in the inside and the spokes is useful sometimes for hanging gear on. As regards the ventilation, as I said, most of the time it's probably not going to be an issue, but when it's very hot and dependent upon where you fish, and some of the places I fish there is no shade or shelter whatsoever. You're out in the open, and when the sun's beating down it gets mercilessly hot in these things, and there is nowhere to escape to get a bit of shade and a bit of shelter. And on more than one occasion I've had to retreat to the nearest bit of woodland by winding the rods in and go and sit out the way for a few hours until the sun's gone down and it's cool enough to come back and sit here. Included in the Fox Super Brolly 60-inch is the carrying case, ground sheet, zip-in transparent door, zip-in mesh door, pegs, the umbrella system itself, the complete front door, or infill panel should I say, and the quick sticks and tensioning rod for the front peak. One thing worth mentioning here is the Fox Super Brolly is let down by the poor quality pegs, in my opinion, that come with it. Good quality pegs should always have the steel right through the centre. That way if the ground's hard and you have to knock them in, you don't split the plastic like you do on these. Moving on to the Fox Super Brolly, this is the 60-inch. As I said, it comes complete with the pole to put a peak in here, which is quite useful because just that little bit there does tend to keep the rain from coming into the doorway at all. Obviously this has got a complete infill panel which you can take out. You can open up the sides as I have done on there, and it's got an entire door that you can drop down letterbox style, or unzip from the bottom, or just have it open on one side, whichever suits you. But obviously you've paid more for this than you have for the Tempest to get these refinements with it. Height wise, without banging your head, there's just a little bit more room by only a matter of a couple of inches compared to the Tempest headroom wise, going in and out the door. So, same bed chair body in here. Room wise, with the front panelling, from the bed chair to the, once again it's the same as a Tempest. It's about 2 foot of room. You can stretch it out a little bit more because you can peg this out further if you wanted to, but it's approximately the same. I've got exactly the same at each end, probably about 8 inches, 10 inches maximum, and a bit of space behind the bed chair. Obviously with that little bit of a peak on, I still wouldn't tend to fish face on into a strong wind with rain forecast without the front panel on. But obviously the obvious advantage with this, with the full infill panel and the letterbox style opening on the door, you can zip it up to there to keep an eye on the water without getting wet. I tend to use this particular bivvy mainly for overnighters on my syndicate waters. For that reason, I won't say it's more sturdy than the Tempest shelter, they're probably about on par. It's got a heavier duty waterproof material. Because it comes complete with the infill panel, which I've got the option to zip in if I think it's going to rain or if it's going to be cold. It's a more practical shelter for that sort of thing. As I said, you've got many door options on here. If you can't turn your bivvy so it's rear on or side on towards the wind, you can at least zip the door up. As I said, you can get that full infill panel, or should I say a full overwrap for the Tempest bivvy, but that's something extra you've got to put on, which adds to the setup time, and also it's something else you've got to dry at the end of the day, and the door options aren't as good on that as they are on this. Right, the other thing as regards this as well, as you can see, it's got ventilation on these rollback panels, but it's also got ventilation at the rear as well. We'll just go around and have a look at that. By the magic of video, we have rear ventilation panels on here, which are Velcro sealed. So it's simply a matter of undoing the Velcro, unzipping the panel and rolling it back to reveal these mesh panels that are on here. A lot of you might be bothered where you've got these velcroed and zip panels on the front and on the rear that you may get water ingress, but I've never found that to be the case in any bivvy I've owned where it's had these particular options. But as I've said to you, depending upon where you fish, and that's what you want to think about, the venue that you fish, the type of swims that you fish. If you're out in the blazing sunlight, opening those panels and letting some airflow through is a godsend, believe you me. The Armo 2-man comes with ground sheet, the bivvy itself, tensioning poles for the peak, and tensioning poles for the bivvy main frame, and plastic window inserts and pegs. And finally we have the Armo 2-man. Height wise, as you can see, it's an awful lot taller. We've got 4'7" there of headroom for getting in and out. It comes complete with a very large peak on it, which does keep the rain from entering into the doorway in all but driving rain into the front of it, in which case on here you can actually letterbox the top of the door anyway, so you can roll it down to about there without fear of getting any rain in it. So we've got plenty of headroom, obviously a much bigger footprint on the Bivvy compared to the other two. Heavy duty material here. The water channels away from here and runs down the front, so it does keep the water off. It's got infill panels front and rear, so you can open those up, you can get a good airflow going through it. It comes complete, as I said, with tensioning bars. It really is quite a sturdy bit of kit, this particular model. The reason why I have a 2-man though is that when I tend to go for more than 1 day sessions, when I go for 2 days or a week, I tend to take the larger Bivvy with me. And the reason for that is as you'll see when we go and have a look inside, I've got much more room. So inside there, if the weather's really bad, I can cook indoors. Which is very difficult to do on the other 2 models because you don't have a great deal of room. You can have a strip wash in there if you want. There's also room, as you'll see, I've got my chair set up in there as well as my bed chair. I can have my bivvy table next to me, all of my tackle around me, if I want to sit in there and do rigs and whatsoever else. Whilst we've talked about the weather, and as I said to you, that's part of the reason why I take this for when I'm doing more than overnighters. If you've ever been in a 1-man bivvy for 48 hours while it's just been torrential rain and you can't even unzip the door, it's that bad, you tend to go a bit stir crazy in the bivvy, and that's the advantage of having something like this. It just gives you all of that room to be able to relax instead of just being confined to your bed chair or your bed chair buddy. So there you have it. There's the 3 options that I tend to use. As I said, I use the Tempest for the very quick overnighters. It's got its place in its armoury for its rapid setup time mainly. I use the Fox Super Brolly when I tend to be going to syndicate waters, or it's just nice to be able to put that infill panel on, zip the door up if you've been up all night catching fish. Not that I have recently, but if you've been up all night just catching fish and you want to get a bit of sleep in the daytime, you can zip the door up and nobody will probably bother you then. And then obviously the other option, as I said, is a good 2-man bivvy, and as I said to you, tend to use those when I'm going for more than 1 day, when I'm going for a weekend or a week. It just got so much more room. Bed chair buddies and everything are alright, but they're not the most comfortable of things to sit on. Bed chairs on their own, great for lying down on, but they're not comfortable for sitting on for long periods and don't do your back any good. It's nice to be able to have that option to get a good chair inside your bivvy, because as I said, it's not always going to be sunshine or nice enough to be outside. Bit of light rain doesn't matter too much, but when it's torrential, which it is sometimes when you go for the weekend, you need to be able to sit indoors, you need to be able to cook indoors, you might need enough room to change out of wet clothing into dry clothing, and the 2-man option fills that gap for me. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, and that's perhaps enlightened a few of you and helped to make your mind up as regards if any of you are going out to purchase a new bivvy this year. But As I said, I'm not sponsored by any particular manufacturer here at all. These are just my independent opinions on what suits my style of fishing and where I tend to fish, and that's my advice to you. That's what you want to think about when you're buying your bivvy.